Welcome to The Threshold, the podcast where we explore the hidden truths of ancient history and the unexplained.
We've all heard the stories and seen the blurry photos of Bigfoot. But why, in 2025, with all our technology, does definitive proof remain so elusive?
It's a genuine paradox. On one hand, you have thousands of eyewitness reports, footprint casts, and that infamous 1967 film. On the other, you have what sources describe as zero scientific evidence. The story of Bigfoot and other cryptids like the Loch Ness Monster isn't just about a potential undiscovered animal.
What is it about them?
It's about the massive gap between belief and biology. It forces us to ask two separate but related questions. First, what would it actually take, scientifically, to prove a new species exists? And second, if that proof is absent, what are the powerful cultural and psychological forces that keep these legends so vibrantly alive?
So it's a scientific mystery and a cultural one, intertwined. That seems like a lot to unpack. Where do we even begin?
Let's start with the hard science. Before we can evaluate the evidence for Bigfoot, we need to establish the baseline. We have to understand the rigorous, methodical process biologists use to discover and formally recognize a new species. It's a much higher bar than most people realize.
Okay, so let's say I'm a scientist and I think I've found a new animal. How does that actually work? Do I just announce it?
Far from it. The process is meticulous and designed to prevent errors. The absolute gold standard, the first and most crucial piece of the puzzle, is obtaining a type specimen. This isn't a photograph or a story. It's a physical, preserved specimen of the organism.
A type specimen? You mean a body?
Exactly. A body, skeletal remains, or at least a significant part of one. Scientists designate one of these as the holotype, the single specimen that serves as the definitive representative of the species. They may also collect paratypes, which are additional specimens that show the range of variation within the species. This physical evidence is essential because it allows other scientists around the world to independently verify the findings.
So once you have this holotype, what happens next? You just compare it to other animals?
That's the next phase, detailed analysis. This involves two main components. First is morphological analysis, which is the careful study of the creature's physical form, its bones, teeth, size, shape, and structure, to distinguish it from known species. The second, and increasingly critical component, is genetic analysis.
That means DNA, right?
Correct. Scientists will sequence the animal's DNA, often using a technique called DNA barcoding, which looks at a specific, standardized region of the genetic code. They compare this sequence to vast global databases of DNA from known species. This tells them definitively if it's something new, and helps determine its evolutionary relationship to other organisms, where it fits on the tree of life.
So you need the body for morphology and the DNA for genetics. Is that it? Is the species then confirmed?
There's one final crucial step: formal publication. The discovery isn't officially recognized until the scientist writes a detailed diagnostic description, gives it a formal scientific name according to strict international rules, and publishes it in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. This description must be thorough enough for any other expert in the field to identify the species. It also gets registered in a global database like ZooBank. Only after surviving this intense scrutiny does a species become officially part of the scientific record.
Wow, a physical body, DNA analysis, peer review. That is an incredibly high standard. So how does the supposed evidence for Bigfoot measure up against that scientific blueprint?
It falls short at every single step, which is the core of the scientific skepticism. Let's break down the most common types of alleged evidence. The most iconic is surely the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. that minute of footage showing a large, hairy creature walking across a clearing in Northern California.
Right. Everyone knows that footage. For many people, that is Bigfoot. Why isn't that considered real evidence by scientists?
Because it fails the first test. It's not a type specimen. You can't perform morphological or genetic analysis on a film. While it's visually compelling to some, it's ultimately unverifiable. The scientific community largely dismisses it as a person in a well-made costume, because that possibility can't be ruled out. The same issue applies to still photos, like the 2007 images from Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest. Believers saw Bigfoot. Skeptics and some experts saw a bear with mange. The ambiguity is the problem.
Okay, so visual evidence is too ambiguous. What about physical traces, like the famous footprints?
Footprints are another major category of anecdotal evidence. We have hundreds of casts. Proponents often point to subtle anatomical details in the casts as proof that they couldn't be faked. But from a scientific perspective, they suffer from the same problem as photos. They are indirect evidence. They don't provide DNA, and they are notoriously easy to hoax. Without a body to connect them to, they remain compelling stories, but not scientific data.
That brings us to the big one then, biological samples. Hasn't anyone ever found hair, droppings, or blood that could be tested for DNA?
They have, and this is where the story gets consistent. Numerous samples of alleged Bigfoot hair, scat, and tissue have been subjected to rigorous genetic testing over the years, and the results are always the same. The DNA identifies the sample as belonging to a known animal, most often a bear, but also deer, canids, humans, and others. Sometimes the sample is too degraded or contaminated to yield a result, but to date, not a single sample has produced a validated DNA sequence of an unknown primate.
Wait, so every single time a supposed Bigfoot sample has been properly DNA tested, it's turned out to be a known animal?
According to the peer-reviewed scientific literature, yes. This leads us to the most powerful scientific argument against Bigfoot's existence: the complete lack of bodies or bones. For a species of large primate to be viable, you'd need a breeding population of thousands of individuals spread out over a large territory. Animals in a population that large die from old age, disease, accidents, and predation. Their bodies would be discovered by hikers, hunters, or forest rangers. Their bones would wash into rivers. The fact that not one single undisputed bone or carcass has ever been found is, for most biologists, statistically insurmountable.
But what about the argument that they are just incredibly elusive and live in vast, remote wilderness areas where people rarely go?
That's a common counterpoint, but ecologists find it unconvincing. Even remote areas are increasingly subject to human traffic, satellite surveillance, and millions of motion-activated trail cameras. A creature reportedly 7 to 10 feet tall would require a massive home range and a lot of food. The idea that a population large enough to sustain itself for centuries could exist across North America without a single unequivocal encounter, a single roadkill, or a single set of remains being found defies ecological and statistical probability.
If the scientific case is that weak, no body, no bones, no validated DNA, then why is the idea of Bigfoot more popular than ever? Why do so many people continue to believe so strongly?
That's the million-dollar question, and it shifts us from the realm of biology into cultural anthropology and psychology. Many academics now argue that the Bigfoot mystery isn't about an undiscovered animal at all. It's about what the idea of Bigfoot represents to us. It's a modern myth that serves a purpose.
What kind of purpose? What do you mean by that?
Well, one scholarly perspective suggests that cryptids act as vessels for our collective societal anxieties. They embody the wild, untamed nature that we feel is disappearing. One book, Joshua Blue Buss' Bigfoot: The Life and Times of a Legend, traces the modern Bigfoot phenomenon to the 1950s. and argues it emerged as a powerful symbol for working-class men grappling with changing social norms and a perceived loss of traditional masculinity.
So, Bigfoot isn't a creature, but a cultural symbol of the wild man archetype.
That's one compelling theory. Another focuses on social identity and regional pride. Folklorists point out that in places like the Pacific Northwest, Sasquatch is a core part of the local identity. Believing in it can be a way of connecting with your region's unique culture and expressing a hope that there are still deep, unexplored wildernesses out there.
That makes sense from a cultural standpoint. But what about the eyewitnesses? The people who are absolutely convinced they saw something in the woods? Are they all lying or mistaken?
Not at all. This is where psychology provides crucial insight. Our brains are wired to find patterns, a phenomenon called pareidolia. We see faces in clouds and figures in shadows. When you combine that with difficult viewing conditions, low light, a fleeting glimpse, the stress of being alone in the woods, our perception can be unreliable. Adrenaline can heighten our senses, but also distort memory.
So, a hunter could see a black bear stand up on its hind legs for a moment, and their brain, primed by all the Bigfoot stories they've ever heard, fills in the gaps and interprets it as Sasquatch.
Precisely. The cultural narrative provides the expectation, and our cognitive biases do the rest. The media, especially iconic images like the Patterson-Gimlin film, reinforces what we expect to see. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. In a way, the very lack of clear evidence is what keeps the legend strong. The ambiguity fuels what one source calls the allure of what if. If we found a body tomorrow, the mystery would be over. The uncertainty is what makes it so enduring.
So we've established the very strict scientific standard for discovering a new species, and we've seen how the existing Bigfoot evidence doesn't come close to meeting it. We've also explored these powerful cultural and psychological forces that keep the legend alive regardless. Where does this leave the search?
From a purely biological perspective, most scientists would say the search in the woods is effectively over. The probability of a large, unknown hominid existing in North America without leaving a single verifiable trace is considered infinitesimally small. This is why cryptozoology, the field dedicated to searching for these creatures, is widely regarded by mainstream science as a pseudoscience. It's driven by anecdote and resists the scientific method.
So perhaps the truly interesting open question isn't, is Bigfoot out there? But why do so many of us want, or even need, Bigfoot to be out there?
That's exactly the question that many folklorists, sociologists, and psychologists are asking now. What does our collective fascination with these monsters of our minds tell us about ourselves? They reflect our relationship with the natural world, our anxieties about the future, and our deep-seated desire for a world that isn't fully mapped, measured, and explained.
So the legend continues, not because of what's hiding in the forest, but because of what's hiding in us.
Exactly. The enduring mystery of Bigfoot has become less about zoology and more about understanding the anatomy of belief itself. The creature may be elusive, but what it represents about our culture and our own minds is right here in plain sight.